Last night, I don't know if you saw the O'Reilly Factor, but Barney Frank was on. I have to tell you, here's how he remembers his role in the housing bust.
I was a strong opponent of the Bush administration's effort to send loans to people who couldn't afford it. I wanted to build rental housing for people, which is not the case where the mortgages went bad. I have a consistent record in opposing the Bush administration's pushing, including Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, into low-interest mortgages that I thought were a mistake.
Especially when he tells it like this. Isn't it? It's really pretty. It's a great story. It's not in the least bit true, but it's a great story, and he told it very well. Actually, when the Bush administration proposed tougher regulation on Freddie and Fannie about 5 years ago, Barney Frank said, and I quote, "These two entities, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, are not facing any kind of financial crisis," end quote. And then in 2003, when the White House warned of, quote, systematic risk for the financial system unless there was stricter regulation of Fannie and Freddie, Frank said, and I quote, "I do think I do not want the same kind of focus on safety and soundness that we have in the OCC, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and OTS, Office of Thrift Supervision. I want to roll the dice on this a little bit more in this situation towards subsidized housing." Oh, well, thanks for rolling the dice with our cash. The other thing that comes to mind when I think of Barney Frank is ACORN. Frank's been one of the most vocal cheerleaders for this group, despite the accusations of criminality piling up against it. Tonight, we look at the next chapter in our ACORN series. This time, we're taking a trip around the world. Fasten your seatbelts, gang. Here we go.
ACORN's founder and former CEO already conquered America. Now Wade Rathke has moved on to the rest of the planet. India, Peru, Argentina, Canada, Dominican Republic, Kenya, Korea, the Philippines, and Indonesia. All countries Rathke's organized citizens in as Chief Organizer of Community Organizations International, formerly known as ACORN International. Why the name change? Rathke writes this on his Chief Organizer blog, quote, "We're changing our name, especially in the U.S., not to be confused with ACORN. I know of no plans whatsoever for ACORN to change its name, but you'd have to ask them," end quote. Rathke was likely pressured by ACORN to rebrand because it doesn't want to be associated with him anymore, at least publicly. Remember, Wade was fired last year after an 8-year cover-up of his brother Dale's $1 million embezzlement. His wife, however, Beth Butler, remains on ACORN's senior staff, and both of their 2 children now work for the organization. Name change or not, the group formerly known as ACORN International remains an ACORN entity. And if allegations are true that money is being funneled between the 200 ACORN affiliates, then Rathke still has access to American taxpayer and donor dollars. And who knows if they're being spent overseas. Matthew Vadam of the Capital Research Center calls Rathke a, quote, organizational genius who deliberately designed the ACORN network to be a complex maze of affiliates, end quote. He says Rathke is really the only person who knows how it all works. But CC may have a clue as well.
CCI, Citizens Consulting, Inc., is basically the financial nerve center for ACORN and all its entities.
Michael McCrae and Charles Turner, both 2 former board members who have sued CCI to open its books. Turner calls it one giant shell game.
This is where the shell game begins. ACORN has over 200 different entities that the money gets moved around to. For this purpose, for that purpose, this organization to that organization. We believe in the way the money has been moved around. They've been laundering money.
Rathke's Community Organizations International has now reached 10 nations, and he isn't stopping there. This past week, the notorious organizer made his way to the land of organized crime, Italia. Rathke's been tweeting about his trips on Twitter. Here's a tweet from Sicily. People want to learn our model and organize. Well, what is that model? It was designed by 2 Columbia University sociologists named Cloward and Piven. It was designed in the 1960s. They inspired the national welfare rights movement that Rathke joined. Their philosophy? You can foment real social change if you break the backs of government by demanding too much, hence destabilizing and reestablishing another government. Rathke's been encouraging citizens of other nations to shake down their banks exactly like the group he founded, ACORN, does back here at home.
Justice Main Street, regulate Wall Street.
The shakedowns here played a pivotal role in the collapse of the housing market, which led to the near collapse of our economy. A current ACORN member believes they approach disenfranchised people, give them a false premise, inaccurate information, and motivate them to attack something. The member says, this time it's industry. The next time, it's the American Constitution. On his blog yesterday, Rathke responded to the recent string of negative coverage of him in the media, saying, quote, I'm just an organizer of lower-income families. I'm not someone on either side of the fence with an axe to grind. So now, what a surprise, he's claiming to be the victim. One thing we do know for sure is that Rathke isn't just an organizer of lower-income families. He's also someone who's admitted to covering up the theft of money from those same people he says he's trying to help. Oh, and by the way, he never went to jail for it.
Well, it has taken more than a month, but Rathke has finally started watching this program and learned our name. On his blog yesterday, Rathke wrote, quote, this guy, Glenn Beck, who is he? Seems to have been on this like white on rice, arguing that he had predicted something, though he seems to have been 100% off base. Really? 100%? Really?